also look at sectors. Okay. So you would love to respond to which of the sectors, more like in our human existence, is most vulnerable to this AI and its existence.
That's the concerning aspect of it.
More.
I think everything is in trouble right now. Yes, everything is in trouble because AI creates music. AI, right, initially it was just help me paraphrase this email, make it more professional, but now it's, crazy what it can do. So even preachers use it to generate sermons.
Oh, we saw that. And I saw that there was a priest that had to call other priests out to say, stop depending on AI.
Okay, imagine that, right? Now, and I think the other concerning part is this, which is why you have to pursue your own personal education, research, and spend time, because it's almost like every information you need is at your beck and call with this AI. But we are losing an important skill, which is to do your own personal research and synthesize information that aligns with whatever goal you're going after.
Absolutely. But let's go back to the question he asked earlier as well, where he talked about the jobs for the future. We keep talking about AI. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago I read an article. It fascinated me. It said AI. I think it was phrased as technology is the new oil for Africa.
Yes.
It would benefit Africa more than oil even did. There were numbers that were quoted, and in spite of that, it was like a revolution. It was right. Everybody was talking about this. In spite of that, we did not see infrastructures that should be helping. I expected hubs. I expected a tweak in our curriculum, just so that young people are. I mean, you see a young child's homework from some schools, and you see that they are telling you to draw a desktop computer. It's not relatable to them. They don't know what that is. It's not something that will ever help them at this moment. These are children who go home and their TVs are touch screen. So, in spite of all of that, and we are so slow-paced, how do you suggest that this self-taught Africans, not just Nigerians, this self-taught can upscale and also be at par with maybe China, India, and Singapore and other countries that are doing so well in AI revolution?
It will take a very determined person to upscale and be at par with people in China and elsewhere in the world where they are revolutionary with AI. That's because on an individual level, there is only so much that you can do. Right? You need the right environment, and that's where government comes in, the educational system comes in, and the infrastructure we have in the country comes in. Also, things like the hub you mentioned, where people know that this pursuit is encouraged, there is a market for it, and they connect with international partners. They are able to continue to fertilize this dream and develop themselves better. So essentially, there is only so much an individual can do if the environmental factors are not playing in the game equally. So it will take a miracle, quite frankly, to achieve that level on a personal scale. And
I don't want you to get too political, but why do you think it is that we have experts all telling government, tweak your curriculum? African government, drop the colonial curriculum that we have. Let's be more visionary. Exactly. Especially, let it be relatable to contemporary needs. Because there are some things some courses that I think should just end already, or be tweaked to an extent that it is relevant to you and I today and the future. So why do you think governments across Africa, I mean, I can count how many have done intentionally something about building a generation that would be relevant in future, but why are we so slow?
I think we're yet to get the right crop of leaders, and even the right people are hiding. The right people that would have, helped us drive this change in the educational system, they are hiding because, just like you said, you don't want to bring in politics. You need to be involved in the political to be able to make such changes. And even when you are involved in it, there is a lot of pushback, right? But I want to give an example with what's the name of this country that Ibrahim Traore is the president right
Niger?
now. I think Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, yeah.
Right. I read
yeah.
recently that he sort of revolutionized their institution, their curriculum, and things like that. Now, it has to come from the top to say no more complete reliance on a colonialist curriculum. Let's develop something homegrown. And you push it relentlessly. Not only do you push it from the top as that leader, you create all the supporting environmental factors like he is doing, and then the citizens will adopt into it and the force will all move it forward. That's what I think.
Now, we have a problem. Let me take you back to the 1970s, where a Nigerian student created a robot and...
Yes,
I saw that.
I saw that.
I was flabbergasted.
I was cringing with
He
anger.
wasn't to the psychiatric hospital.
Yes. Yeah.
And this would have actually brought out Africa
Yes.
from where we are now to where we're supposed to be, if in the 1970s we were able to actually get this right. And a whole lot of, today we are talking about Egypt being the first
African
country to have actually gotten civilized, exposed,
Yeah.
all round. But I mean, Egypt is in Africa, and Africa is still behind. Now, what is the major problem we are having in Africa that is not allowing us to grow? But it has to do with the whole AI and intelligence moving from where we are now to where we're supposed to be. What is that major problem?
Okay. Let me go back a little bit to your 1970-something reference. And if I forget this, your last question, remind me. I think what must have happened at that time, you need to also understand the collective consciousness back then. And I think a typical way to really understand it is watching movies. The Nigerian movies tell you a lot about the collective thinking, right? How can you say you've invented such a mind-blowing technology back then with the collective thinking? Of course, the normal narrative would be, oh my God, you've gone mental. I don't know if you understand. If it was nowadays, you have more supporters. Now imagine how isolated that guy was back then. I'm sure he was also doubting what he did and also really thought he was mental. But because of the collective, state of mind, that couldn't go beyond that. Right now, going into your question on moving forward, right? What are please remind me.
Why are we not moving forward?
Why are we not moving
Being
forward?
that we are actually the ones who seem to have probably gotten far and even
Set
farther.
the trend,
Yeah.
if we want to.
Yes.
I think it's also environmental. It's also the context in which you are working, right? Imagine that we continue to develop, and you can't develop beyond the environment that you are in, except you remove yourself or change the environment. So the environment factor is such a big player that most people, overlook, right? Imagine if we were developing societally, infrastructurally, as much as China and all those other countries that you mentioned. We'll be able to keep up. We also have economic problems. People are unable to feed. On an empty stomach, you can't think right. Somebody that has not eaten, the last thing he's thinking about is technology and AI. You are in auto survival mode. Where are you going to get the next thing on your mind? It's not technology, and it's not as if naturally in the conducive environment you don't have the capacity to create and innovate. But that survival mode is just going to keep you chasing your next meal. Do you understand? So there is an infrastructure problem, there is a government problem, and there is also the economic situation that many people are in. They may have the capacity, they may have the creativity, but all of these combined will keep, pulling them down.
Absolutely. Well, it's time to go for a short break. We still have so much to discuss, because the angle I thought he was going to go with that question would be the fact that Africa, no matter as unprepared as we were at the time, our mindset, the environment where this innovation came from, Africa now, as unprepared as we still are, embraced it because it came from the West. And the narrative that it was the perfect thing because it came from the West. I thought that was where we were going with that. But when we come back from the break, I'd like you to address that I think is self-esteem issues that we still have. If it doesn't come from everywhere else but Africa, we embrace. And then I would like you to also address if this self-learning is a strength or it's going to, if we are not careful and not do something fast, it is going to affect our pace in the global scheme of things. We'll be back after this short break. This is RAZEB Africa.
Welcome to RAZEB Africa, the heartbeat of the continent in one show. Here, we celebrate Africa not as a headline, but as a home full of ideas, courage, flavor, and future. This is where we talk about everything Africa. The politics that shape our nations, the innovations that shift our economies, the culture that colors our lives, the challenges we face with honesty, and the victories we are building one story at a time. On this show, no topic is swept aside. We are unfiltered and we are intentional. We bring you experts from across the continent and the world. Voices that know, voices that live the African experience, voices that are shaping the next chapter of our story. Let your spirit rise. We don't just tell Africa's story, we own it. Join Joy Asonye on RAZEB Africa, Monday to Friday at 11 a.m. to 12 noon on Global Television.
Welcome back from that very short break. This is RAZEB Africa, where we are discussing AI, the jobs of the future, and the readiness of the African young person. In the studio with me is a beautiful young lady who is a personal leadership coach. She's also worked as what's it now?
Development sector.
In the development sector, absolutely. So thank you so much for still.
You have said she's beautiful. You sound mysterious.
Right. No, we're Africans. You know, in Africa, the kind of things that will be harassment is normal. Yeah, it's complimentary. In some climes, you tell a lady you're beautiful and like you get HR. You call HR immediately. So we're discussing how our readiness for the future and the fact that when it's homegrown, we don't give it as much attention as when it is fed to us. So we are kind of wired to consume and not produce for the world. How can we change that rhetorical narrative, and how can we change our mindset to love Africa, love the innovations within Africa? And while you're answering that, it is only when it is homegrown and it is attached and you see the attention it gets from, and by the way, it's a struggle to even get that attention from the West, that we now see, oh, paper, oh, we're now a flutter wave, oh, it is our own. And it's only because we saw the attention, it was brought over by the or got the attention of the international community, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, so I think it's it's an offspring of being colonized, right? If we weren't colonized, we would continue to maintain our own inherent identity and just move on with it. But what can be done for that shift? And I'm happy you mentioned something around the mindset, right? There needs to be a general, national, or collective mindset shift. And we already have institutions that can drive this, like the National Orientation Agency. You know, I remember growing up, there was, I think, who was the Minister of Information? Was it Dora Akunyele at one point in time? And she did a very good job in, you know, making people proud to be associated with Nigerian things. So it needs to be a national level driven mindset shift that will make people to be proud of being associated with anything homegrown. That's one. Now, two, because we have noticed that it's only when we now have international recognition that things appear to matter and have value, it's good to, one, embrace quality outputs, right? We need to improve on the quality of whatever it is we create. Not only that, leverage on that international association and create avenues, maybe conferences, maybe local places where we invite, international partners to come and see what we are doing. You mentioned Flutterwave. If it didn't go out there, the international partners wouldn't have become associated with it, right? So we need to put ourselves out there and say, this is what we are doing. But first, we need to collectively work on our mindset to be able to be proud of whatever it is we create, and then leverage upon that international awareness to get more local acceptance of our technologies and whatever it is we make.
So you've actually come up with a very important one, and it is of concern to me too when you talked about the education of which we have in Nigeria or in Africa generally. So I'm beginning to think if we have actually grown in Africa to that point where we would say that in our schools or educational system generally, we are currently preparing our young minds towards the AI-driven world.
I don't think so, because you would see that much of the AI acquired knowledge is self-pursued, right? It's only, there's a very small percentage that get that awareness and education from the educational systems that we currently have. Maybe the upper class, their children in high-level institutions and whatnot. But there is, despite that limitation, there are other approaches that we can take that is homegrown. For example, education is not just within the walls of a classroom, right? You can adopt our local models, whatever local models we have at the grassroots level, village chiefs and whatnot, women groups, to introduce all of these things. It may not be at advanced level, but exposure is introduction. Do you understand? And that way we are carrying everybody along. But if to say that the educational system alone, if it's giving exposure to AI and technologies, I would say it's just for the upper class, and the rest are not getting as much as others are getting. But still, if we have a collective system such that no matter your economic class, you have an introduction, people have development goals that they want to pursue. If it's of interest to a child at that local level, they on their own will continue to pursue it to the best of their ability.
So I want to take you, we are on the program RAZEB Africa, and everything we talk about here, or most of the things we talk about here, we try to see how to link it back to our heritage, back home. So let's go back home a little bit. For you, I know you come from a certain place. I come from a very deep interior village, and I've been thinking, what were our forefathers doing back then that looks like AI today?
What were they doing back then that looks like AI? Okay, I wouldn't say it looks like AI, but they had their own native intelligence that we've overlooked. And I sometimes think that all this evolution of AI is also somebody's native intelligence that they groomed into what it is now. Because there is a science behind even the kind of meals that we eat, but we haven't explode it and attach scientific words or to them that make it look appealing. More so, the point she spoke about finding value in anything external more than internal. So we've let go of whatever intelligence we have that may have evolved into our own form of AI.
Right. But you're very right, because my mom one time asked me, he said, think about it. The cassava was not just planted, plucked out, cooked and eaten. It was grated, it was squeezed out, it was fried, that entire process. And you call our ancient or our ancestors primitive. But they knew the entire process. If you understand fermentation,
they knew what each step did. Each step they may not have scientific words.
Now we make it Gary flakes, or we call it flakes or whatever. But the process was not easy. It was very, I've come from Cross River State. I don't know if you know Ekpankoko.
Yeah, I do.
You don't just you grate it, you systematically fold it, and all of that. It's not. These are processes that.
And if you miss one step, you won't get the same outcome.
Yeah.
So that shows you that it's systematic.
Systems, exactly. So I absolutely agree with you. But can we build a global competitive workforce with this landscape, with the challenges that we have at the moment? Can we build a global workforce? Because one irritating trend I am seeing now is Nigerians being used to, they just want to learn remote jobs. While that may be of, attracting some sort of foreign currencies to improve our GDP in some way, I feel like we could do better with our time. We can't just condition our minds. If every young person you meet is like, oh, have you figured out a remote job I can do?
Yeah.
Remote jobs that are ennobling other economies. And I'm saying, why don't we build solutions that would solve our own indigenous problems instead of looking for remote jobs? And so with that kind of the whole thing just irritates me when I meet young people who say, I'm trying to figure out the remote jobs, and then you need to learn, if you go through the processes, one of them had to speak in a certain accent so that it is clear. My goodness. And I'm like, we can do way better than that. We can look inwards and create solutions to indigenous problems. So with our mind right there, how do we build this global workforce?
I think the answer is a bit within what you said, right? Looking inward and valuing what we have locally. But that also has its own challenges because of the economic situation of the country, right? Now, the reason why people tend to want to go for these remote jobs is because it's almost a near immediate output. You get a result, you get economic gain almost immediately, right? Now, compare that to doing something local, homegrown. That's not quite clear. There's no blueprint of what you're doing. Say, for instance, you want to, evaluate and bring up the science in what it takes to make ekpankukwo, or, so that you can export it.
It's suspicious how well you pronounce it.
Of course, right? So that you can export it. Now, that takes a lot of work, time, and there is no blueprint to follow that somebody else has already done this for you that will make it easier. So it's easy for people to give up on it. Do you understand? And just go to an already made reality. And that's why it's very important to get the economy right. For people to be able to have the luxury to eat, take care of themselves, and then explore all these other things that they can build upon and export. That way, you have to invest in the economy for it to boom. Absolutely. Without that investment, you can't quadruple or multiply whatever it is that you want to achieve. So we need investments in the economy, first of all. There needs to be a certain baseline state of mind that people have to be able to authentically create, expand on, and export homegrown things.
So you have mentioned in the course of your response the economic transformation that we are supposed to have in Africa, and that takes me to the aspect of acceleration and somehow inequality. So can AI realistically accelerate industrialization in Africa, or will it in some way deepen inequality?
For people who can afford it, it will accelerate it for them. For people who cannot afford it, yes, the inequality gap will be wide.
Absolutely.
In those groups of people. So if you can afford access to AI, your life improves by multiple times. But if you can't, you are stuck in, manual labor. You are stuck in exchanging enormous amounts of time for very little output. And you will not be able to generate as much result as somebody who is industrialized, digitized, and using artificial intelligence. So yes, the inequality gap would really widen, except if we are working to also move those people little by little, deliberately.
Exactly. You are responding into the next question I had, because you're saying that there'll be some sort of inequality gap.
Right.
Does that mean that for us to be able to kill that gap, let's forget about AI,
Okay.
and then just live our lives as Africans that we are?
You can't be ostracized from the rest of the world.
Well,
Even when we tried to, they came and colonized us. Right? And the world has evolved so much so that you can't just say, oh,
Live in isolation.
Exactly.
I'm not disturbed. I mean, look at what's happening with the global conflict and how it's affecting Africa.
Exactly.
And even with your best intentions.
Okay, so we should have just signed a contract and say we are not interested in this, and our fuel price will, remain the same and whatnot. But within the context of globalization right now, that's unrealistic. One way or the other, even the woman in the village is being affected, whether directly or indirectly.
Yeah. Well, you on the backdrop of that question, I would like to ask: is the problem economic or its lack of education? Because what you mentioned earlier is you kept talking about the economic situation, but I've also seen people who, from the bottoms up, just because they knew they had the information for it, they could build and grow from there. So, is there gap in information?
Yeah, there is. Two truths can coexist. There is a gap in information, but also the gap in information is also economical, because people can't afford to enter into spaces where they get accurate and needful information. So they are interconnected.
Now, I don't know, Joy, thank you very much for that question, because it is also drawing my attention to something I've been thinking over time. If Africa decides to say, let's jump into AI fully, and everyone is in acceptance and we get to do it, which industry, which sector do you think will thrive very well that other parts of the world will now come to us?
That's difficult to answer. Which industry? The thing is, it's difficult to pick
maybe
one.
Let's say this is going to be our focus.
Give me options. What are the priority industries?
Okay, so in the agricultural sector,
Okay.
we have a whole lot of, we have people even grow things in their houses, indoors. So it is still sort of, in agriculture. In the educational system, people learn from home. So
And even if we want to concentrate on agriculture, for instance, I mean, the innovations that I see. I attended an oil and gas exhibition and summit some time ago, and I was blown away at the innovations that exist. All the problems Nigeria claims we have, there is technology for it. In agriculture as well. The reason I brought the oil and gas petroleum innovation is we're talking about the enormous amount of crude that's been stolen, which has affected our national output yearly. Okay, there is technology that identifies every drop and identifies where it goes. You would account for every drop. In fact, if it doesn't go there, it gives signal.
Okay.
And it is not an expensive venture for the government. It's not expensive for an individual to come and talk of the government. So in agriculture as well, one of the biggest problems is data collection, for instance. There's technology that addresses every single plant and a yield in innovation. My question is, in all of this, the private sector has not seen the need to massively invest in AI development for African young people. Why is that so? We see the numbers. It has the opportunity to, we keep pounding this in our head. Oh, with AI, we're going to see more educated people. Jobs are going to be created using AI. We are going to see skills will be. We keep talking government, but why have we not seen private sector massively come in here if indeed AI is as lucrative as we keep saying, if technology is as lucrative as we keep saying, and there is return on investment?
My personal opinion is that it's because as much as AI is an opportunity, it's also a threat. And you said private institutions, they are privately owned, right? There is a bottom line fear of what will this do to my industry? What will this do to my work? Right? Will it take out money and food from my table? Do you understand? So there is a reluctance.
Who's expressing this fear?
Private businesses, private individuals.
Right.
So there is a reluctance in adoption, much less training somebody else. Do you understand? Now, that shift is needed, right, from the private sector enterprise to see that, okay, yes, this is a threat, but there's nothing I can do about it. I have to find a way to get on board with it and get it over with as soon as possible, right? So it's also getting sufficient, adequate information to know that there's nothing you can do to fight this. It's come to stay.
It's coming and it's coming
right?
to stay.
The earlier you get on board, the faster you can even monetize and make more profit.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think that's the shift that's needed for private institutions.
And so if young Africans decide to now do AI and jump into it fully today, what should they do differently, like from yesterday?
What should they do differently? Whatever the Western world is doing, we should solve our own local problems with the AI.
Now, yes, I asked and I said young Africans. Now, let's look at Africans generally, even my father. So if my father...
What's your father's problem, first of all?
So my father will be 65 on the 1st of October.
Okay, happy
so
birthday.
65-year-old.
Very young man, yeah.
Yeah, a 65-year-old man in Africa.
Yes.
What do you think he should do differently? Okay, so he sits on his phone every day and...
He sent AI-generated videos.
He does.
What should he do differently?
What should he do differently?
To me, that he has actually bought into the idea that AI is gradually taking over the world.
Okay. I think if your dad can share AI-generated images with you, he's highly educated, right, and can already get good benefits from using AI, right? Things that would have taken him longer to understand, he can just, quickly. My mom calls me and says, please, what is the meaning of this medicine they've given me? If your dad is in that situation, he can just put it, type it in, or even voice. You can use voice and just say, I need help with this, and it will give you the information that you need. So you're not always dependent on somebody else. That's one benefit that your dad can get. If you're not available for him to speak to urgently and he needs an information, he can just speak to the thing and it will give him, And another thing too, I recently, I asked about, change of name and whatnot, how to go about it. And I asked it into Gemini and it gave me, these are the list of places that you can go to. So for simple information that they need at their age, right now, so many of them may not even have young people around to, keep feeding them things like that. But if they are able to access it and just ask their simple questions, it will improve the quality of their life and bring some ease to them.
So what do we need to do to move from the whole consumption to creation? Because it looks as though we are always, just like Joel asked earlier, I think this is going to be my last year, we are always ready to consume. How do we move? How do we change that mindset? How do we have that mindset shift from consumption to creation?
I don't know why all of the answers keep going back to
each other.
they are sort of interlinked, right? To move from consumption to creation, to create, you need to have at least bare minimum. You need to have some things that are already taken care of for you to be able to rest, right? Now, one of the basic things that we need to get right to be able to create and create sustainably is electricity in this country. Right? There are many things, even you as an individual, you have a creative spark and then you start and something stops you. It's either maybe network or lights. You have to go figure out something and it cuts that creativity. So there are certain things that need to be put in place for creativity to, spark up and grow in this country.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for what you said there. But in the final analysis for young people watching you now and saying, you know what, I don't want to be consumers. I want to be a global player in building. And we have mentioned all the challenges that exist, all the challenges pulling back a typical African young person. But in spite of this, what's the encouraging words that you will leave with?
I think the encouraging word that I'll leave with is that irrespective of all these challenges, we are in the most insightful and miraculous time that has ever existed. And for whatever class you are, there are opportunities that you can still plug into that will maybe not necessarily transform your life instantly, but move you to the next level. And that moving to the next step is sometimes all you can do. And if you do that, next step like that, you would get